Stephan.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Happy Monday. It's time for NFA Money Talks, and I'm psyched to be here. And right away, we want you to dive into this conversation with us and think about what you want in your business to get to six figures, far beyond whatever level you want to take it to. I'm going to open with the question: if you could go back to your startup self, whenever you think that is, Stefan, what would you tell yourself to build a six-figure business faster?
It's very spontaneously. Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you, Dottore, for having me on your live show
Yes.
today at NFA Money Talks. I think the biggest part is don't be so fucking full of yourself. Can I say this on your show?
Oh, yeah. You can swear
Can
as
I
much
say
as
that?
you want.
No, I think that's the biggest part. Be humble from the very beginning and understand surrounding people, um, bringing people around you who are actually really smarter than you, and don't be intimidated by people who are smarter than you. I think that's the biggest lesson. And I think the youngest generation, having five generations, in business today, so to speak, I think that's one thing we all realize, that they know how to build community, right? It's all about community, but use the
Mhm.
community. And I don't mean this in a using kind of a way, but let them influence you. Listen to the community and take the things they've learned, and they can help you with, support you with, really, really serious, and listen to it.
I love this. I'm writing it down because I want everyone to read this tip. I'm curious. Okay, and we're going to dive into all three of what you come up with. Um, how do you build community when you're a startup business?
I think it's. I mean, the work and the word networking has become quite common, and is a big word, so to speak. But I think networking, and we can talk more, and I think we do need to talk more about it. Is a big part of that. Expose yourself, ask for help, be vulnerable, be open, and don't be righteous about the things that you know that work and don't work. And I think that's the piece. There's experience, there's expertise out there, which, as somebody who is a first timer, if you're a first time CEO, if you're a first time entrepreneur, whatever you call yourself, um, really go out and ask for help. And listen, I always tell people a lot of times, when you think about it, who is your first board of advisors? That's your friends. Your first board of directors is your parents, because they always tell you no. And your first venture capital angel investors is usually the grandparents, because that's where you go when you can't get it from your parents. You go there and say, can I get $1 or 5 or 10? Think about almost that same infrastructure in your network, your community, your ecosystem, and go out and just, be open, vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, why do you think that's hard for some people? I think the open and vulnerable part is where people get stuck, as they go, they're scared to promote themselves, especially when they're a startup.
I think it's super hard, but I think it also goes back to, I mean, it goes back to, I mean, let me talk about myself. I mean, I'm a guy who grew up with a very, very strong father. And my father, until not too many years ago, was very easily able in 15 seconds to make me feel not good enough. And I do believe that what happens in the marketplace, what happens in social media, there's an attitude out there which says, if I'm not just like that person, or if I'm not looking like that person, or I don't put that
Mm.
vibe out there, well, then people don't like me. And I think that external validation is something that so many people are looking for better, worse, or for wrong. And I think that's the piece. The more comfortable you get with yourself, the more you also, as an entrepreneur, able to really believe that what you're looking to create impact with, that you're on the right track. Because I think what also a lot of entrepreneurs may have experienced in their own careers, or are experiencing as they're going through it, is, or anybody for that matter who's building their own future and creating their own impact, is somebody says something to you and suddenly you start flailing, you start questioning, you start going, well, is this really the right way? I mean, let's talk about, I always make this example of Sir Richard Branson, little brand he's built with Virgin. And so he was rejected, I want to say, by 172 or 173 banks. Most of us, after we pitch, would give up probably after 20 or 30.
I think that's even
Right?
overestimating. Yeah.
Probably. But
Yeah.
he went to 172 different banks and he got no's. The 173rd finally said, well, we're going to give you some money to build Virgin, the first label. And so that's what we got to put in perspective. So there is, a moment to say, as an entrepreneur, it's working or not working, and to pivot potentially, or to adjust, whatever we want to call it. But in general terms, be you know be open, be out there a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, be bold. Don't be afraid. I would ask someone ask me, what's the reason you were able to break through to six figures fast? And I sat with it for a second and I thought, I mean, I could say so many things right now. And I thought shameless self-promotion.
I think that's one part, but I think it's also a
Yeah.
good. I mean, we're on a money, no NFA money talks, but it
Yeah,
also is like managing your money smart, right? What you
totally.
don't need
Yeah.
as a, I think here's a beautiful time, and even though we always talk in these shows and let it be agnostic of the date, but we're talking in February of 2022 here. And what's important is what all of us have learned who had the big offices and the small offices. To build a successful business, you don't need a big office. What you need is you need good people, you need trust, you need transparency, you need community, you need relationships, right? That's
Yeah.
the words which I think resonate with everybody.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
having said, sorry, go ahead, please.
Nope. Well, I was going to say what you're talking about is can keep your expenses low
There you go.
while you're building your business.
Even if you build your business and you have your
Yeah.
business, don't be stupid about spending money. And I'm one of those guys. I was stupid. I've M&A companies, I've sold companies, and you get the money, and now you think, oh, great, now we're gonna live it up. Well, you buy the new car, you do this, you do that. I mean, all kinds of stupid stuff. And a car is just a small expense. There's other things you buy. But here's the thing: that is the dumb decisions a lot of my generation and the generation behind me has made. I think young people today, I mean, retirement early is very, very sexy these days. And there's a lot of people who work on that, say, you know what, I'm going to save all the money I potentially can. I'm going to be as cheap as possible that I can be, if that's office expenses, if that is clothing, if that is housing, if that's whatever it may be. And guess what? And that's how generational wealth is being built. And if you're smart about that, if you're listening here, if you're smart about that, you don't need, you don't need the $800 a month payment for a car. You don't need to lease a car. If you finance the car, well, be smart about that. Whatever it may be, if you buy a house, well, housing sometimes is really overrated. I mean, it's the American dream. Oh, when I'm 25, I need to have my first house. Well, maybe, but maybe the market right now is not necessarily the market to buy that house. Give it a little time. Be smart about it. And I'm not a financial advisor. So I would say, again, also here, go into the community, connect with some people who can give you good advice there. And that automatically, then, if you're smart about that, you will get to that six figures, and you will find that there's also, in terms of income streams, it's not just one income stream. Be smart about that as well. And I'm sure, ask away, Amanda, whatever direction you want to take this in.
Well,
But I just want to throw a few darts on.
Yeah, you're bringing up such important conversations that I think, there's so many elements that go into building a business and making money. And something that you're
That's
pointing
right.
out that is incredibly important. I think it's going to sound funny to say this, but I was very fortunate that I was on food stamps when I started my business because I didn't have money to waste.
Right.
I bootstrapped. I did everything. I learned it and I
Yeah.
hustled and I did sweat equity growth and I really
That's
didn't
right.
waste any money. To this day, I'm still very strategic about the money I spend in my business. Even though I make way more money, I make 5, 6, 7, 8 times the money I made a couple years ago. And so I go like, wow, I could spend all of that money and I get very strategic because the only two ways to make money in your business, more money, increase your prices, increase your revenue, or decrease your expenses.
That's exactly
And
right.
so if you're maxed out on your expenses and you don't take a look at that on a regular basis, you can be wasting a ton of money. And especially when you're pre-six figure, you need that money to be
100%.
continuing to float month to month.
I mean, I think the other thing is, I always I joke about it, but it's a reality. Once we have a business, and let's define business by, we're generating revenue, there's income, there's expenditures, there's multiple people involved, there's multiple income streams, there's multiple engagements in the business. We all have these little cards. They're called American Express or whatever else, credit cards and charge cards we use.
Mm-hmm.
I would invite everybody listening, go onto your statement and look what you spend every single month in subscriptions, in renewals, in fees, and all kinds of stupid stuff. I mean, I own probably right now 37 of 38 different web domains. I just got hit with a renewal for 2 years for $89 from net. What is it called? Not GoDaddy, the other one.
There's so many.
The reason why I'm bringing it up is
I'm
going, crap. I just paid $80 for something that I really didn't want anymore,
you don't use,
just because I didn't pay attention to that. And so
Yeah.
I think that's the other part I would invite everybody to think about is not just where you spend your money ultimately, but where is there potential, I'll call it exposure of an expense because you're not tracking where you put your card.
Yeah.
And I just recently saw something really interesting, and I don't know if it works or not, but I'm going to put it out there. Somebody said, get a gift card, which is an American Express gift card, charge it up. And then next time you sign up for a trial, just use that number and sign it up for the trial because there's no money on it, but it will allow
Smart.
you because it's an
Yeah.
American Express
So
card.
then it doesn't just
It
automatically
There you go. It
renew.
doesn't automatically renew.
It's
So I
brilliant.
think that's actually a clever way. And I again,
Yeah.
listeners, viewers, I'm not sure if that actually works. I haven't tried it, but
Yeah.
it sounded like maybe that could work.
Yeah.
And so these are the
Well,
kinds of
here's a
things.
strategy. What I do is I put the day that I make the subscription, I go straight to my calendar and I put the next subscription date and I say, do I still want the subscription? And I just autopilot it. So then when
Beautiful.
a couple days before it comes up, I'm like, okay, let's assess. Have I used this tool? Is it working? Do I need to drop it? Like pay attention to your money. I think something
100%.
that people don't do in their business as a habit is tracking. And
Yeah,
and that's like consistent bookkeeping. And this is a topic of tracking where you go, if you want to have a successful business, you got to know what's going on with your money. Most people are afraid to look at it. They often avoid it. They have these money
that's
blocks,
the piece.
right?
Yeah, that's the piece. Weekly. I mean, let's talk about a couple of things there. I think one thing is great. Check your subscriptions. One of the things I started doing regularly, probably once to twice a month, I go onto. I'm an iPhone user. I go onto iPhone, and you can go right onto. You go into your settings. You click on your iCloud and your iPhone settings, and your Apple ID right underneath your name. You click on that, and you can see your subscriptions right there. Check out how many stupid things you are subscribed to on your iPhone and then just cancel out of it. You can do it right there. I mean,
Yeah.
that is literally like a punishable way of using your own money stupidly.
Yeah.
The second piece is to your point. I love the tracking component, right? I mean, we have Alexa, we have Siri, we have this, we have that. Just say, hey, Siri, remind me to do X, Y, Z. And we're not
I
utilizing the
love Siri.
technology to our
Yeah.
benefit. And I think these are the other things where, the outsourced brain, the phone has become the outsourced brain. Well, put it to work, your outsourced brain. And I think that, to your point, I love that. The tracking, I think, is so important.
Yeah. These are such practical tips that people don't think about. And they are the ones that have had me be successful. I was reading the other day, I think it's 45 or 50% of businesses fail in the first 3 years of going into business. And I'm going,
Yep.
okay, well, the reason that I do NFA Money Talks is to make sure that entrepreneurs know what is essential for them to keep building their businesses. What have we learned in the process? And I
Yep.
know for you, we're going to get to your second and third tips. I want to know, will you share with people who are just plugging in what your background is? Because I know that you have a long history of building very lucrative, profitable businesses and making a huge impact. So will you share a little bit of your backstory?
Sure. Backstory very simple. Born in Germany, Stuttgart, Stuttgart, as people say here, right? Mostly, Stuttgart is known for two cars which we make, which is Mercedes and Porsche, Porsche and Mercedes, as people say here. If you're listening from North America. Came to the US probably about 30 years ago for hospitality. So people was always a theme for me, and that's kind of become and continued to be my beacon. Then started, 24, 25 years ago, almost now. One of the first ASP, we called it then, now SaaS-based LMS companies. So learning, impact, ubiquitous access was always something that was huge for me. And that kind of emerged into building education technology companies globally, North America, Asia, Europe, and then kind of 10 years ago, it's been 10 years now, I started Human Innovation Garage, and that's been really focused on initially executive coaching, but then really culture dynamics within companies and corporations and individuals. And that's really, as you're looking at the screen, as I can see it as well. So if you go check out theculturemaker.com, I think what COVID and the hopeful exit with the light at the end of the tunnel and not another train coming our way is telling us is people matter, right? And we've always talked about it, but I think finally, and I want to applaud everybody who's doing it. I was a great article about a week and a half ago in the New York Times. I quit, you quit, we all quit. And I think that's a little bit, that's sexy. We quit because people are realizing that their time, their life, their value matters. and no longer to other people, but to themselves. They're acknowledging themselves for who they are, which I can only applaud. And what now needs to happen is really that companies are becoming more sensible about how do we really allow people to see that they matter to us. And that's what Culture Maker is really all about. So go check it out. And so today I spent my time between executive coaching, advising CEOs and rising leaders, as well as individuals in, how do they show up in their ecosystem? What do they get triggered with? And how can I serve and support them in just showing up more influential and with more impact?
So important. It's interesting. There's always this resonance of themes. It's been time optimization has been so huge in my world lately, and who I've been working with and talking to. And it's that piece of my time matters so much, because who knows when it's going to end and how it's going to end. And we all know that we have the exact same amount of time every day. And now we're starting to be much more strategic. And I would say, the word that's coming to mind is picky about how we spend our time.
I think that's the piece, right? I think we're making more choices, and we're realizing that our choices have consequences.
Yeah.
And I think the other part, what I would invite everybody to really think about is not only you matter, but the people you spend time with matters. And for different reasons, not just for the reason that we talked earlier in terms of community, but it certainly also matters. There's regret is one of the most wasted emotions in life. And the reason why I'm saying that is the more you're able to make choices. Let me give a perfect example. And Warren Buffett has said this a long time ago. He said, say no to more things than you say yes. And the thing about it is we're kind of programmed that we feel from a conformist standpoint, and we are living in a conformist society. That's just a fact. Happy to challenge that. Text me, call me if you're listening this. I want to talk about it. But it's one of those things where if you say no more often than you say yes, and I would invite everybody, tomorrow, today, whenever you see this, go out and say 3 or 4 times no a day and track it. If you're actually able to say committed, no, 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 right? Not in one sentence, but I mean, 4 different subjects. Because here's what happens. When you then say yes to something, the genuineness, the joy you will have, the commitment you're making, and the commitment the other person will feel that you actually said yes is so much more truthful and so much more honest and genuine versus constantly saying yes because we feel, oh, they expect me to say yes. Well, you know what? I said to my daughter, I love her to death. She's in her late 20s now, and she's still today. I sometimes say her that she knows that. I used to say to her when she was little, I said, listen, honey, every question that you ask, there can always be a yes and a no. And this comes from a guy who expected everybody to say yes to him. So I had to learn that as well. So just because I talk about it today doesn't mean I'm perfect at it or that I hadn't my own hardships with it, because they always say, the more screwed up you are, then better you actually are in nurturing and mentoring people. So the point is, if you say yes in that situation, it's just so much more genuine, so much more truthful, I think.
Yeah. Wow. I read something about, it was from James Clear, Atomic Habits, and he was talking about saying yes and saying no. And I was loving this conversation because it was about when you say yes to something, you're taking on a responsibility and a liability.
100%.
When you say no to something, you're actually creating a commitment that you are not responsible for that thing you're saying yes to. So and this time optimization is really important. People pleasers and people who don't have clear boundaries, clear values, clear vision, they will say yes to everything.
The word boundaries you just brought up, that's what it's all about, right? I keep saying to people, if I say to you, hey, Amanda, you know what? This is working for me. But what's not working for me is A, B, C, and D. Well, I'm inviting you to continue staying in our relationship. I'm not pushing you away. If I don't have that conversation, right? It's a difficult conversation oftentimes, a boundary conversation. But if I'm not having the conversation, I'm just telling you that I don't give a shit. But if I'm having the conversation, what I'm really saying, and I want you all who are maybe the recipients of the difficult conversation to listen to this. If somebody comes to you and says, you know what, this is working for me, this is working for me, this is not working for me, I'd like to have a compromise on this. I want us to continue the relationship in the following manner because that works for me, but tell me also what works for you. You know what, that's the biggest compliment you can get, because what they're saying is, I want to continue interacting with you, I want to continue being with you in the relationship. And here's how it works for me versus just walking away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes. Such powerful tips. These are the things I think we don't often talk about. It's like there's so much strategy around building a business and making money. And it's like the nuances of how important it is to optimize your time, track your expenses,
Yeah,
all the things that we've been talking about
yeah,
so far, like boundaries and saying yes and saying no. The reason that it's so important is the overwhelm of the plate where you go, oh my God, the more I put on my plate, the more overwhelmed I feel, the less dynamic I feel, the less inspired I feel, the more stressed I feel, which is a repellent energy, which then causes you to
100%.
hate your business.
Yeah,
And there's a lot to do in building a business. So you got to be really strategic with your time. It's interesting because, earlier when we were talking about this, drop the non-essential expenses. You could replace the money here with time. Drop the non-essential expenses of your time and track your time. This will
love
help
it.
you understand how to spend your time the
Yep.
most efficiently and effectively and the most powerfully to where you end your day feeling like, oh yeah, I got it all completed in a powerful way, and the results are creating an exponential effect.
I love that. So I think the piece, the energetic part also that we need to associate with time is so important. And what I say to people a lot is like, think of your day, think of it like a cartridge. When you get up in the morning, let's hope that your cartridge is full. And then you get to decide, nobody else. You get to decide where you're going to start spending your charge on that cartridge. And here's the thing, that's why morning routines and morning habituation is so important. If you get up in the morning and the first thing you do is pick up your phone and check your emails, guess who's controlling your energy? Whoever's on the other side of that email. But
Hmm.
if you again set that boundary, and you don't have to justify that to anybody. And I will challenge anybody who says, "Oh, my boss is going to give me a hard time." Well, you know what? Then maybe you need to look for a different company, or you need to have a conversation with your boss, or you need to have a conversation with yourself in the mirror that you need to have that difficult conversation. That's what ultimately sets up your day. There's nothing else. It's like I don't care what you do in the morning. If you go for a walk with the dog, if you go run through the forest, if you go on your rowing machine, on your Peloton, on your bike of Peloton or the treadmill, or whatever it is that you need to do to preserve that energy until you're ready to receive and not
Hmm.
let somebody else control your day. That is so, so, so important. And I think it's such an essential part in where kind of, as you said, that's where time management starts, right? What
Yeah.
am I going to let in? Because the moment I make an energy commitment, and I love that what you said with atomic habits, if I say yes, I make a commitment. If I say yes, I take a responsibility on. Well, it's the same thing when you pick up that phone, you start engaging in that first text message, that first email, whatever else it is. There's a draw. It's like somebody puts a leash around you, the digital leash, and says, now you're walking this way because I told you so. And it's going to sit on you. It's going to make you grumpy over whatever it is you do first in the morning. And it's not, in the end, it's not healthy. I mean, that's the bottom line
So true.
because it affects I mean, psychosomatic effects of that, they are 100% happening. They're 100% there. And if you don't believe it, go pick up a book anywhere you want. If that's UC Davis, if that's Harvard, if that's anybody else, go pick it up, read it. You can read about it. And it's so important to recognize that.
Yeah, I always think of checking your email in the morning as the first thing you're doing is creating a nonstop fire where you have this just constant stress because it's a wormhole.
Yeah,
You never know. That one email that you read could upset you, lead you in five different directions, and
that's
now
right.
your whole day is gone.
That's right.
Your energetic alignment is completely gone for the day.
Uh,
And so it's so
Love
powerful
it.
to remember these tools that are
Yep.
very essential. What would you say? I know we're going so many fun places. What would you say is number two? I know we've already given a ton of tips, but what would you say is number two for getting to a six-figure business faster? So far we have, I'm gonna show this. We have it. Oh, maybe I'm not going to show it. Let's see. I love doing this real time. It's like, oh, so there's a lot on here. There we go. So don't be intimidated by people who are smarter than you. Learn from them. What would you say is the second tip you'd give?
Surround yourself with good money people.
Ooh, say more.
So I think get a good tax. I mean, depending what your business is in, I mean, you got to take a look at that, which direction you're going. But let me take a most recent conversation. I was advising somebody in the course of my business, and I said, you know what, make sure that you get a good tax lawyer, somebody who really understands what the implications are as you're building that company with two other people. And what's the smartest way to do that? Is it under a separate entity, where then the entity invests into that new entity, or what it may be? So I think it's surround yourself with good money people. That's somebody who knows when you make the extra money where to put it, can potentially help you with that. I mean, putting your money in the bank is not the way to do it. I'll tell you that one right now. Put it to, there's particularly when you start growing wealth and you're looking to build wealth, family wealth, and you got some money already, then you got to look at annuities, life insurance, et cetera, et cetera. Get a good CPA who really understands, what's it needs to be legal, but there's often fine lines, and you have somebody who's really good. They can advise you very positively there. And I think be smart about what kind of entity you form.
Yeah.
Sorry, what kind of entity you form, and what the tax implications of that entity are, which goes back to where I just started. So I think money people on various levels is an important piece.
When would you tell people to do this, and at what stage of their business building?
I think the moment you take money in, or the moment you take your own money, if you have any kind of assets, house, car, anything else that potentially somebody can go after,
Yeah.
and how do you really build the fence around it that A is protected, but B also that it continues growing. If you're making investments with the monies and the proceeds that you're making from your business, where do you put them? What makes most sense?
Yeah.
If you're international, if you're not, what's your permitting in terms of who you are. I mean, I'm a resident alien here. Or is it still called a resident? I think it's still called a resident alien. And so, what's your home country? Are there advantages there?
Yeah.
Et
So
cetera, et cetera.
educate yourself on the
Yeah,
smartest
100%.
wealth building strategies,
100%.
and think about it early, like immediately.
Well, and I think that's what it is. I always used to say to people, build your company like you're a big company from the very beginning. Don't dig a hole,
Yeah.
fill it again, and dig it again. So I think that's the other part. Set it up in a structure. And I don't mean necessarily a corporate structure, but in general terms, make sure you got a good attorney. Make sure and that may be on various levels. It may be a corporate attorney, depending where you're in. Maybe you want a firm which has multidisciplinary, where you have everything from an IT attorney to somebody who's a corporate attorney to a litigator, depending on what business you're in. You got to be prepared for that. I mean, the joke 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when we started our first company was, until we have a lawsuit, we're nobody. And there is some truth to that, right? Until somebody feels you stepping on their feet and they let you know that, you're really not making an impression.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody finally says, hey, you're using my name, go away. Well, that's when there's a perceived threat, but also you suddenly have some form of credibility.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not suggesting go get in a lawsuit, but what I am saying is,
Yeah.
just don't start talking about these things when it's a problem. And then
Too
the other
late.
thing I think we
Yeah.
got to talk about is, if you're building a business, are you a sole proprietor? And I don't mean this in the corporate entity, but are you alone as a founder, or are you multiple founders? And that's another thing, again, have the conversation of the distribution, the stocks, et cetera, early on, because that gets really ugly once money comes in, because
Yeah.
now suddenly everybody wants a piece of it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another part where you want to put that behind you at the early stages, and then just, everything else is then on cruise control as it relates to that piece, operating agreement, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And that'll change over the course of the company. But at least for the first, 6 to 12 months, put it in a spot where you don't have to worry about it. You can focus on building the business, and understand what you're really, really good at. And I think that we're going through now, 2.5. Understand what is your personal core competency.
Mm-hmm.
If you are somebody who's really good at sales, well, don't hire a salesperson. Go do it yourself. You can save a lot of money. Bootstrap it. You don't need a big corporate office. You don't need all the fancy stuff. I mean, funny story. In one of my first startups, no, my first startup, we were essentially an e-learning company, a learning platform, compliance training. And it's funny that in 2022, we're still talking about this. We're talking 97, 98, sexual harassment, discrimination, and diversity training, right? That was a big thing after the new affirmative defense then in 1998 by the Supreme Court. So the reason why I'm bringing it up is so that we were 3 co-founders, and a lot of happened in my kitchen in a town, a suburb here of Boston, in Newton. And we would be in there until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning doing stuff. So essentially was a programmer, kind of the front face, which was me, which is coming from a visionary standpoint. And we had a designer. And whenever we had a conference call, you know what we do? At that time, I was driving a Ford Explorer, a big black Ford Explorer. And my daughter at that time, she called it Baloo. And so it was sitting in the driveway, and there was this free talker, which was like a plastic telephone, which was at that time the thing. And we would go jump into the car, and that was our conference room, because I could keep it on speaker,
I
and
love
we were
it.
in the conference room. So
Yeah.
when we would say we're going to go have a conference call in the conference room, well, that was like we're going in the car in the driveway, and we're sitting around, because that was, we didn't spend at that time these
Yeah.
speakerphones. They were horrendously expensive. And
Yeah.
if anybody would speak in the room and you didn't have the expensive version, I don't remember what it was. That's the other part. Now, next part, don't splurge on travel. I mean, as I'm talking about this, we would drive from
Yeah.
Boston down to Providence, Rhode Island, because the flights were cheaper. And you know what? That's what you do. Share your hotel rooms. Is that, if you're a guy who is 30, 35 years old, and you just maybe came out of finance, got some money in the bank, and now you're starting with two other guys to build a company, is that sexy to share the room with another guy? Probably not. If it's, a woman and a guy, that's a totally different story. You got to be respectful there. I'm not suggesting that. Nevertheless, don't splurge on travel expenses.
Yeah.
Be smart about it. Be smart about the rental cars. Don't pick the rental cars up at the airport. Go take the train into the city and pick the rental car up there. That makes a huge difference. I mean, silly little stuff
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
adds up very, very, very quickly. In a lot of cities, I mean, New York, you don't need an Uber, because if you're in your hotel in an Uber and you need to go a mile and a half airline down the street, it'll take you in the morning in New York 45 minutes. Go take the subway. It'll
Yeah.
take you
Yeah.
7 minutes.
So what I hear you saying, and I wrote number 3 because we've covered so many different topics that all lead to this. Spend time and money consciously is
100%.
essential. So, and
100%.
when you're saying consciously, it's like, consider your expenses. I think sometimes it's interesting in manifestation. We often go, okay, look at the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And so you act as if it's already happened. And so I think sometimes that gives people almost this idea like, oh, spend money like you're already making a ton of money. That's not the thing. You actually, you embody it, which actually means a very wealthy person, a wealthy business owner is strategic, right?
My mother, I will never ever not say that. My mother always used to say in German, von reichen Leuten kann man das Sparen lernen. The translation is, from rich people, you can learn how to save money. And it's the honest to God's truth.
Yeah.
Because there is nobody. I mean, if you look at old money, there's a lot of nouveau riche out there, and like, oh, I got $1 million or 5 million or whatever else. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, because when you look at how people spend money, old money knows how to save money.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Totally.
it's just inherently there. And it's just so cool when you do it and you finally get it.
Yeah.
I saw yesterday somewhere on a social media channel, I saw a guy, and he says, buy used cars.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I know it doesn't sound sexy buying a used car.
Yeah. Saves you a
But
lot of
it
money.
saves a lot of money. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not going to
I'm
talk
always
about
looking at that fine line too, is like, of going, because I've had a life where I haven't gotten to have a lot of opulence. So as I make more money, I'm like, there's certain things that I strategically choose to really have luxury and feel good.
Yeah.
And then there's other places where I'm like, I do not give a crap about that, and I'm saving my money here. And so, I think this is always going to be related to your values. It's not that you're torturing yourself and never buying anything nice or doing anything nice.
Yeah.
It's strategic and conscious, right?
100%.
And the wealthiest people, you've read, I'm sure, The Millionaire Next Door. It's like, I think about that often, where you go, oh, there's this idea that wealthy people are just, opulently flashy and wasting money all the time, and because they have it to waste and spend. And that is not the case. And that's not what we're talking about. It's like, embody wealth, which is balanced spending in your values.
Well, I think values is an important part here. But look, you're talking to a guy who made quite a bit of money and spent money quite stupidly. Exclamation mark, hashtag did it.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, I would never. So if that be the younger self, I'd say, don't be so stupid about it. But you know what? It's money comes and goes. And I think that's, again, also energetically founded. But that's exactly what it is. And I think we talk about responsibility, and we talk about building a business. When you're building a business, the other thing you got to realize is, like it or not, you're taking responsibility on the moment you hire your first person for other people.
Yeah.
They look to you. It's safety. It's transparency. it's sanity, it's future to them. It's a partnership. I don't care if you're the boss or not. It's not about being the boss. It's about how can you support them and how can they support you, right? If we think about in the context of building a company, servant leadership, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You're going to be only as good as the trust you're building and as much as you are willing to go out for the people who work with you. And I'm purposely not saying the people who work for you, because that attitude of, oh, you work for me and I sign your paycheck. If you're listening and you're CEO and you're thinking that way, go fuck yourself. Because guess what? Wake up. It doesn't fucking work that way anymore.
Yeah.
And if that's the way you run your business, and I don't care if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, you need an attitude adjustment. And I am hoping that you're able to get that attitude adjustment and get yourself kind of your own little advisory board of like 5 millennials who come to your office every week and help you, almost like a 360 life assessment, to say, hey, you know what you're doing here is awesome, but maybe on this side and in this factor and the way you talk about this, maybe we could present it a little differently. If you're doing that as a senior leader, guess what? You're on the right path, and you're on the path to change. And that's what we all, I think, need to grab our own noses. And I had to do it many, many times and still do today at times, and say, hey, you know what? Maybe what I'm doing here is not ideal. But that willingness to self-reflect and self-assess in the moment and being able to have the capacity of self-awareness, I think that's huge. Sorry, I can rant on
it's
that
great.
forever.
I mean, we could deep dive forever into these. These are, to me, the critical conversations. It's like self-reflective awareness. And I think it's interesting because you talk about, you've been there and done it. And so you've gotten to be on the other side and learn these lessons. And so I always like to shrink the learning time for people. You could shrink the learning curve, and that's what NFA Money Talks is all about. It's go like, hey, learn from the people who have been there and done that, so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. And I do
That's
mistakes
right.
and quotes, because I think you're always going to learn from your mistakes. So, it's how you perceive that. But it's like, hey, let's be conscious about the way we make money. Let's be intentional. Let's build communities, and let's be different types of owners where we have teams. I mean, you're
That's
saying
right.
some really important, valuable things here. I'm curious if you could share, and I know, I was thinking we would go around 30 minutes, but we're having way too juicy of a conversation. So we're just going to keep going for a little bit longer.
I want to quickly acknowledge, Amanda, Zamba is there. Zamba Mendez.
Yes, I did want to show his comment, and I realized I showed it earlier. It was distracting because it's not what we were talking about at the time. Zamba, yes, hey, so glad you're here. And I know there's not a question, but thanks for sharing. Building your company like you already have a big company is a huge critical key takeaway. So that's something that we talked about earlier. Applying it. If anyone has questions who's here, of course, put them in the comments and we will post them and answer them. So we love to be interactive with you. If you have a question, if you have a comment, let us know. Anything you want to say here, Stephan?
Zamba, thank you. And I think that's, apply it, connect. You can find Dr. Amanda and me, we're pretty out there. So always love to hear from people and keep throwing some questions across here. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go back to this. I wanted to ask you, I like to always think about money blocks and, things that we learn in terms of the growth. And I know a lot of what we're talking about right now is overcoming money blocks that you've experienced in the past. What would you say is one money belief that you had that really structured your initial thinking about growing a business in unconscious ways, potentially? And so breakthroughs you've had in the way that you think about money in general.
I'm going to put one thing out there, and I don't equate money to success. Money does not define success. And I believe that a lot of people will say, oh, if you don't have money, you're not successful. I started 6 companies, 3 I talk about, 3 not so much. And the reason why I was initially for a long time hesitant to talk about it, because the other 3, they were not financial successes. And I think there's a shame we're taking on, because again, society tells us, if you're not rich, you're not famous through your money, you didn't have the big exit, you didn't get the big investment, you didn't get this, and then there's this dismissiveness. And if you're VC seeing this, VCs, there's some wonderful, amazing venture capital companies and individuals, if that's on the angel level of the individual investor side, if that's on the side of venture capital companies. But there's also some VCs out there who I think they take pleasure out of shaming entrepreneurs into making them feel like crap. And that's not helpful, right? Because I do believe that if you have elevated yourself into the position of venture capital and you have the capacity of enabling companies through money to actually grow, you also take on, we talked about responsibility earlier, you're taking on a responsibility for the individuals more actually than just giving them money. And so I think there's a part there where for me for a long time, things that I didn't feel that I succeeded money wise gave me a lot of anxiety, gave me a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fear and a lot of shame. And I
Mm-hmm.
think as guys in particular, because the reality is in the core, we're all kids, we all want to matter and we want to be seen. But as we get older, we're gatherers and hunters. And it was almost like, if I'm the guy who lives in the cave next door to you and my bear is bigger that I bring home than yours, well, I'm the bigger man. And I think that's the way guys still look at it today. If my car is bigger, my frame of my lenses is more expensive, my headphones are more expensive, my watch is more expensive, whatever it is, my shoes are more expensive, the jacket I buy is more. Oh my God, guys, reality check. And I can't speak for women, and I say it as respectful, or whatever else you declare. I'm sure in any area, in any gender direction, it's very, very similar. But I can only speak for me being a guy. But guy to guy, guys, drop it. It's not. That's not
Yeah.
what life is about.
I think it's important what you're bringing up is that money is often equated to power
Yeah,
and self-worth and identity.
that's what it is.
So
Exactly.
it's like, especially if you're an entrepreneur where you're coming up with your own paycheck, then you go like, in a way, you aren't successful if you're not making money, which means
No,
your business can't thrive. But then we get that attached to this meaning of like, I'm not enough or I'm not
that's
good
exactly right.
enough. And so then we start comparing ourselves to other people, and it just causes this downward spiral of self-judgment. And, I always think
That's
of
right.
comparison being the death of joy. So when we're comparing
Mm,
ourselves to other people negatively, we can't feel good. There's always going to be someone ahead of you. And there's
well,
always going to be someone who's making a bigger impact and making more money. And so it's, in my mind, I go, play your own game, have
mhm,
money be fun, and have it be an enhancement
right.
to your life. But I'm curious in this way, what do you think money is then? Like, what does money mean to you?
I think it's enablement. I think you said the word. I think it's an enablement. I don't look at money as, I mean, does money make things possible which, can translate into joy?
Hmm.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. And
Yeah.
money, I think, is a necessary tool.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe there's different levels of money. If now that we're talking about it, maybe there's money as a tool and as a necessary resource to, pay your mortgage, pay your house. Well, that's the mortgage, pay whatever. If you buy a car, to send your kids to education, to school, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's and obviously groceries and the
Yeah.
core essentials of what
Absolutely.
every human being needs:
Yeah.
food, shelter, etc.
Yeah.
And
I
then I
I
think
think it's
comes
like the quest of money, right? So it's the quest of what amount of money that makes you feel.
and now comes the point exactly.
Yeah.
So now we get to the next level, which is like, okay, if I have that, what else happens?
Yeah.
Okay, so what can I do with money? And then, one of the other things I always invite people to think about is what impact can you make with your money? Is it just about you, or is it actually about your environment that you can impact? Is it about philanthropy? Is it about
Yeah.
silent philanthropy? I mean, one of the things I got introduced to when I was spending so much time in India is silent philanthropy. People don't, I mean, it's a very, please forgive me, North America, it's a very American way. You give like $150 or $500 and you get your little plaque on the bench in the park which says, this bench was donated by John Jackson and we thank his family for it. Get over it, John. Give those $500 somewhere else and actually make a difference, and don't get yourself all riled up over the fact that you now get a park bench. Because
Yeah.
the question is, what is actually behind it? So in India, what I've seen a lot, silent philanthropy. People put their staff, put their families through school because these people can't afford it. So somebody who's got a lot of money just quietly spends and pays the tuition for somebody,
Yeah.
or
Wow. That's
quietly
cool.
does whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Imagine if the people who have, I mean, we every day, I want to say the number is 17,000 right now when I last checked it. Every day, the United States mints about 17,000. I think it's 17, maybe 117,000 new millionaires every single day.
Yeah, I know the number at some point too, but I can't remember. Yeah.
But
Wow.
that's the
Yeah.
dimension. And
Yeah.
once you get, here's the reality, guys. Here's a number for you. Once you get to about $2.5 to $3 million in the bank, you can live off your interest if you have a conservative lifestyle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
So
you have your money, you build a business that you enjoy that makes impact. You keep consciously spending your time and energy on wealth building strategies, and then you get to live off of passive income where your money makes money for you, and then you don't ever have to make any choices based on the lack of money,
if you're smart about it,
which is
because that then
incredible.
exactly, and
Yeah.
because interest compounds.
Yeah.
And so if you then make some smart investments, and again, don't do it in the bank, you very quickly get to a point where you then get to make some choices, right? And
Yeah.
it's the same thing like I work with my clients. I say goals are boring. Goals. I mean, the word goal is like not even a sexy word. Let's talk about impact. Let's talk about making a difference. Let's talk about inspiration.
Yeah.
That's what we want to talk about. And I
Yeah.
think these are the kinds of things where, I mean, what's a goal? I said recently to somebody, goal is like when you think of a soccer field, there's two teams playing. And if that game ends 5-3, both of those teams got their goals, right? But one lost. And
Yeah.
that goal, if you ever been on a soccer field and you're the forward against the goalie, it's not that difficult to sink that ball into the goal. But you can place it anywhere. Well, how precise is that? The point being, even though you lost, you still got 3 goals. But the impact is that one team lost and one team won. And the team that won is going to move on to the championship. So if you want to be that team and create that impact for your club, for your teammates, for everybody else, you got to start thinking differently. And I think that's the piece which is much more required.
Yeah. Thinking a lot about financial mindset, and you were talking about the stages of money making, and I love this quote by Mark Twain. He says the lack of money is the root of all evil, and the reason I'm saying that is because I look at the stages of money making I've been in, and where you're at and where we go, build up a net worth of $2 to $3 million. For some people watching this, they're gonna be like, that seems totally impossible, and for other people, they're already there, they're beyond that. And so I think there's this really important thought of, wherever you're at right now, unless you have your needs met, you can't even think beyond. You can't, it's impossible to give back because you don't even have your needs met yet. And then as you move through those, let's say the scale of wealth,
Yep.
you're going to start to up level the
Yep.
ways that you think. And so constantly, I like to help people stretch their zone and start going, okay, where are you at right now? And of course, obviously I'm not usually working with people who have $0 because they pay me to work. And so I look at where I was when I couldn't hire a coach. It was like on food stamps. It was like I felt this way. The lack of money is the root of all evil because all I thought about all day was money and making money and how to make money. And it felt like money is success. And so, I love this conversation we're having because it's walking through all those different parts of me getting to grow a business and going from food stamps to building a 6-figure business and then,
Yep.
reaching for 7 figures and going like,
Yep.
wow, my perceptions of money and wealth have changed a lot over time. And I think that that's something that everybody here will evolve through as you develop different layers of your business and different phases of your business and have different levels of on your team and in your income. And it's such a, like you said earlier, money brings up a lot of shame. So it's
100%.
something that people don't love to talk about, which is why I love to talk about it here. It's like, let's be honest and open about some of the shit we've struggled through and how we feel about it and what money means to us. And so I so appreciate you sharing your wealth
You
of
know,
knowledge.
and I think there's little things and I'm going to share a couple of stories, and I just had a story happening the other day, not a story, but something I did because I mean, the reality is we have all fairly a good understanding when we see people in the buildings we live in or the people we employ in the buildings we live in or whatever else it may be, what their lifestyle is, right? And it's also clear that what their income is, right? And I think the gestures you can make by being genuine, by also being generous with your money, and the impact you can make with that can absolutely make someone's day. And I
Mm-hmm.
want you all to think about is if you're living in an apartment building, in a condo building, or wherever else it is, if you give somebody who works in your building in janitorial services, you give them $50 or a gift card for $50, you know how long they're going to eat for lunch for that? Probably the entire week,
Yeah.
probably longer than that. Because if they buy themselves a sandwich, well, actually, sandwiches now are 8, 9, 12 bucks as well. But
Yeah.
whatever it means, these kinds of little things, these kinds of paying it forward gestures, or just a genuine expression of being grateful for what they do and how they impact your day, your life, whatever it may be, that's, I think, kindness
Yeah.
is a word we don't, in the
Mm.
context of money, we don't talk about kindness. And money, if it's applied in a genuine, generous, meaningful, impactful way, can actually be a kind gesture
Hmm.
because it can make a difference for somebody.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's maybe a momentary difference, maybe there's a short-term impact, whatever it may be. Consider that as a tool. So you asked me earlier, what is money? Well, in that input, in that context, money becomes a tool. It becomes an enabler. It becomes a catalyst. I mean, use the word. And I think
Yeah.
that's such an important piece there as well. And that's another thing. I think when people hear money, I don't want to talk about money, right? It's kind of that hand goes. I was like, oh, well, what do you want to know? It's like, wow. And I think that's such an important piece.
Yeah, I like that. Thinking, tool, like I think of it when I think, I don't know how you spell enabler. I don't know if it's a word. It enables.
Yeah,
There
enabler.
you go. Yeah. So it's like, I think about it as an amplifier. Like you're saying, like an enabler is like it enables you to amplify who and what you are. Is that,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I'm just reading the comments. Edward, thank you for that. If I Amanda, I can throw it in our way. Um, it's interesting. So the question is
let's see
um,
here. Let's pop that up there. Yeah.
whether we will be able to hold our self-image, self-worth in the absence of it, meaning the absence of money. It's I think so. The short answer is, first of all, Edward, thank you for the question. I think the short answer is yes, we can, but I think
Mm,
it takes a
great.
lot of it takes work. And I was that guy when I mean, as an entrepreneur, it's a roller coaster. There is an entrepreneur's depression. Anybody who doesn't acknowledge it, guess what, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real thing. There's the roller coaster where you go up, and there's the roller coaster you're down, and then that cart gets stuck at the bottom, and you go, "Holy crap! What am I going to do now?" And so I think there is it requires self-reflection. I think it requires a good community around you in the closest, most intimate sense, people who are supporting you, your champions.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I
so
want to add to this too. Like, this is so
go.
interesting to me because, and thank you for highlighting the comments. I had moved my screen over, and so I couldn't see that people were commenting. So thank you. Um, yes, thank you, Edward, for this question. This is interesting because most people think once I get wealthy and have money, I'll feel good about myself. And it's the reverse. Actually, no matter where you are currently right now, when you start to feel good about yourself and you have that sense of self-worth and self-empowerment, self-love, self-mastery, you start to then attract money your way or attract opportunities your way in alignment with that feeling of self-worth. And so
Yeah,
most people think like my money equals power equals success, and once I have it, people will acknowledge and I'll acknowledge myself, and it's that outer validation. And it's actually the exact opposite. So
yeah,
once you start to work on, and I'm not saying specifically you, I know that this is a general question, but for me, the way it worked was I realized I was really victim minded and I really beat myself up and I really negatively compared myself to other people. And once I started to improve that part of myself, I did a lot of confidence training and I hyper focused on how do I
yeah,
love myself more and like myself more. And once I started to do that, everything in my outer world started to change. And then I started to have more opportunities, like being on here with Stephan, like 5 years ago, I would have never even thought was possible. Having a six-figure business on my own, I would have never thought was possible. Having a marriage I love, I didn't think was possible. Like I had so many places where I just thought I'm stuck, I'm forever going to be poor. And then I just really started to shift to like, okay, what does confidence mean and how am I going to get that? Because that
right.
is then the attractor magnet for everything I've created in my reality. So it's really the opposite of what you're saying. It's like you won't be able to have this sense of self-worth and self-image. You won't have that feeling of high self-worth and having a strong self-image, like an empowered self-image, whether you're rich or poor, unless you have that in all situations. That would be my thought
No,
there.
I love it. I love it, Edward. I hope that's helpful. And I think the other thing I will say to you is I think there's a lot of people who are very lone. I mean, so there's the thing, right? Loneliness and being alone,
Yeah.
and one is an emotion that's very normal, and the other one not so much.
Yeah.
And money can be also. I mean, I want you to, if you have people in your environment who are very wealthy, observe what they do. Some of them have a healthy relationship to money, and some of them don't.
Yeah.
And what they do is they almost buy friends, right? I've seen that.
Yeah.
And you end up being the guy, when you made some money, you end up being the guy who always pays the bill because everybody wants to go out for dinner with you.
Right.
No.
Not authentic.
But people do it because they're afraid of saying no, because they're going, when you ask them, is it really because of my money that they all hang with me? They will not want to discuss that question with you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think the challenge is that when people make a lot of money and they use their money in that way, they don't know whether people are actually connecting them with them because they enjoy the connection, or if they're being used for their money potentially. I actually had in my history, there was this guy that worked with my ex-husband, and he was really wealthy, and no one knew except for a couple of people. And he would actually go on dates, and he had like a very inexpensive truck, and he would never tell anyone that he was had a lot of money, because he wanted to know if people liked him for who he was versus the money he had. And I thought it was fascinating. And it makes sense. You know, it's like money is complex. It has us feeling a lot of ways.
I'll tell you a funny story. I got to share the story because it's really funny. So years ago, I drove a CLS 550, which is a beautiful Mercedes. It's for a long time was my favorite car. And for the winter, I mean, it has low profile tires, 19-inch tires, and I live in the Boston area. Useless car in the wintertime, right? And that particular model, on top of it, was not the 4MATIC at that time. They only had the back wheel drive. So you got a ton of horsepower, and you're on the snow or on ice, and you can't drive it. So I then went out and I literally bought myself a less than $2,000 1999 Subaru. Nice. No, I'm not kidding about it. And I had spiked tires on it. And this thing flew through the snow like crazy. It was amazing. So my Mercedes was in the garage. And on days there was a little snow or it was icy or something else, I used that Subaru. It was a little banged up. It was black. It was very cool. It was very clean. It was fantastic. So my license plate was a distinct license plate when I would drive up with my CLS in front of particular hotels. I mean, I can say it now because the hotel doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. The old Ritz-Carlton in Boston. And the doorman would always know me. Or there was other hotels like that. If there was the Mandarin or anywhere else, I would drive up with my car and they knew my car. They recognized it. They recognized my license plate. And, oh, hello, welcome. And da-da-da-da-da. Okay. Same doorman. Like, you know what's coming now, right?
Yeah, this is amazing.
I'm driving up with my little Subaru, who's black. It's a 1999, looks perfectly clean, but they completely ignored me.
God, it's wild.
And I drive up and I go, hey, it's me. Oh, okay. All right. Can you take care of my car? So this attitude shift talks about not just their conditioning, but it talks a little bit, that's reflective of society.
Yeah.
And you know what? For a while, it really bothered me. I probably 4, 5, 6 years ago, I wouldn't have talked about this.
Yeah.
Today, it's a funny story.
Yeah.
Because it's like, get over
that
yourself.
Is powerful, right? Because you go out in the world and it gets reflected back at you.
But that's the kind of stuff we do.
Yeah, totally.
Right? And the moment I put $20 in his hand because he's still keeping my car in the front door, well, the world was better.
Yeah.
Now, okay, he was making money. We're talking about money, so he was supporting his own, money track. Great. But that's the thing, guys.
I mean, wow. Go.
Don't be kinder or less kind to somebody because you think they have money or not, or because you assume or not. We don't know.
Yeah.
In particular, North America is a part of the world where just because you know it, look at somebody and the way they're dressed or what they wear or what they drive, you don't know who they are or what they got.
You don't. Let's say that you were poor and that was the only car that you could get, let's say. Still be nice.
That's it. That's exactly what it is. I mean, be kind.
The kindness piece is so powerful. I love that you say this because it's like I used to have a 99 Honda CRV that I was like, it was the nicest car I'd ever had. Since I was a single mom. It worked so well. It was so amazing. And it was $5,000 and I had to pay it off over a loan over time after my minivan broke down after I got divorced. And I remember when I graduated with my PhD, I was like, oh man, I can't drive up to client appointments in this car. So I bought a new car, which was just a little upgrade. It was like, money, like the perceptions we have about ourselves and other people about
Absolutely.
money shows up in these ways. So to me, it's about true confidence, because then that's when you really have, and it doesn't even take FU money. It's like FU confidence, right? FU confidence would be like, I drive what I drive because I choose to drive it, and I don't care what you think of me.
Yeah, no, and I think it goes back to, it's not even FU. I think it's just, God, I mean, when the pandemic started 2 years ago, I was like, hopefully when we come out on the other side, everybody's going to be kinder, nicer, more inclusive. I
Yeah.
think it's actually kind of going a little bit the other way.
Ah,
And so I think, invitation here for everybody, just express kindness. And the other part is what we don't, you talked about energy earlier, right? How do we spend
yeah,
our energy? When you do something for someone else and you actually pay it forward, you allow somebody to pass in front of you through a door, you actually get an energy hit in your body. It's oxytocin.
it's
And
incredible, right?
oxytocin actually stays with you longer than what's dopamine, right? Dopamine is kind of the quick rush. Oxytocin kind of stays over time. So you do things good for others. Doing good for others is actually you're self-nurturing.
Yeah. Well, and it's the law of cause and effect, right? Like what you reap, you sow.
100%. I mean, if that's in the NLP context or in the in
Yeah.
the in the neurochemistry context
Yeah.
of neurotransmitters, it's exactly, that's the other piece. We don't have enough awareness around it, and we
Yeah.
have a whole nother NFA Money
I
Talks
know.
around that
I
piece.
love this. We got to wrap up because it's an hour, and I'm looking at the clock. I'm going, oh, I have another appointment right now. Whoops.
All right, you're cutting me off. That's good.
I would love to talk to you all day.
We're going to leave the
Yeah,
cliffhanger here.
yes, that's right. Thank you so much for coming on. It was some really
Thank you so
incredible
much for having me.
conversations. Everyone here, definitely check Stephan out at theculturemaker.com. You all know where to find me, NFA Money everywhere. Also, I just created the NFA Money Formula, which is an awesome resource with all kinds of cool stuff. So go there for that. I am back here every Monday at noon Mountain Standard Time with another NFA Money Talk. Thank you so much. It's been really fun to get to hang out and talk to you, Stephan. You're
Awesome.
amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks to everyone else for being here. Leave us some comments if you're watching this later, and we will see you again another time.
Talk
Bye,
soon. Thanks
everyone.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.